Before diving into the video, did you know that over 80% of you watching right now aren't subscribed? Your one like and one subscribe means the absolute world to this channel and helps us keep going. Hit those buttons real quick and let's get into the video. Chapter 1. The Boardroom Betrayal. 3 years into our marriage, she slapped me across the face in the boardroom for another man. She said, "David, give him the company. You don't deserve it." I smiled. No tears, no shouting, no flipping the table. I quietly signed the stock transfer agreement and even slid the company seal across the table to him. Everyone thought I'd folded. What they didn't know was this. There was an $80 million hole sitting in the company's books. My hand was shaking when I signed, not because I was angry, but because I was afraid she might change her mind. Victoria walked into the conference room and every executive immediately stood up, not out of respect, but because there was a man walking behind her. Julian, her college sweetheart, the one people called the perfect one that got away, a foreign-educated finance prodigy with a reputation for being exceptionally capable. I was sitting at the head of the table, a cup of coffee still steaming in my hand. For a brief second, when I saw them walking side by side, I thought I must be seeing things. But Victoria's very first sentence told me that today's meeting had nothing to do with quarterly earnings. David Vance, she called me by my full name. The last time she'd done that was 3 years ago when we signed our marriage certificate. I sat down my coffee. "What is it?" She walked toward me, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. Then she raised her hand. Smack! Her palm landed squarely across my left cheek. The entire room fell silent. The pen in Brian's hand slipped free and rolled onto the table. He stared blankly for 3 seconds before even thinking about picking it up. My head turned to the side. My left ear rang. It didn't hurt. It really didn't. But I still put on the expression of a man whose heart had just been shattered. After all, I'd been waiting 3 months for that slap. Victoria's eyes were red. Whether it was genuine emotion or just another performance, I couldn't tell. Her acting had improved considerably over the past 3 years. "David, give him the company." She pointed at Julian behind her, then looked back at me. "You don't deserve it." Julian stood behind her with a calm expression. His eyes carried that particular look that said, "I'm sorry things turned out this way, but I really am better than you." His tailored suit fit perfectly. His hair was immaculate. The entire man radiated the energy of a self-help success guru. I almost lost my composure. There were 11 executives in the room. Not a single one spoke. Some stared at their phones, some studied the ceiling, others suddenly became deeply fascinated by a bottle of mineral water sitting on the conference table. My secretary, Chloe, stood in the corner. She was biting her lips so hard it was nearly bleeding. She was the only person in the room who knew the company's real financial situation other than me. I took a deep breath and stood up. "Okay." Victoria froze. She had clearly been prepared for a screaming match. Julian looked surprised as well. Neither of them had expected things to go this smoothly. I walked to the other side of the conference table and picked up the stock transfer agreement that legal had prepared in advance. I flipped to the last page, signed my name, stamped it, then slid the company seal toward Julian. The entire process took less than 2 minutes. Brian finally bent down and picked up his pen. He looked at me, and the expression on his face was so complicated it could have filled an 800-word essay. Chapter 2. The Relief of Freedom. Brian had been with the company's finance department for years. He knew exactly what those numbers meant. But he didn't dare say a word because Victoria was Richard's daughter. Richard might have retired, but he still carried plenty of influence in the industry. I slid the signed documents across the table toward Victoria. "Go ahead and sign." She picked up the pen. Her hand was shaking, maybe from excitement, maybe from emotion. After all, she was finally getting to unite the man she loved most with the company. How romantic! I silently applauded her in my head. After signing, Victoria looked at me. Her lips parted slightly as if she wanted to say something. I didn't give her the chance. "I've already moved my things out. The house is yours. I'll take the car. It's not worth much anyway, so let me take advantage of you." I grabbed the car keys from the table and walked toward the door. "Oh, right." I glanced back at Julian. He straightened his back and met my gaze. "Congratulations." After saying that single word, I pushed the door open and left. The hallway stretched endlessly ahead. My dress shoes clicked against the marble floor. Tap, tap, tap. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside and pressed the button for basement level 1. The moment the doors closed, I smiled. Not a bitter smile, not a cold smile. The kind of smile that comes from finally throwing away a scorching hot potato you've been desperate to get rid of. A smile of pure relief. I covered my face and crouched in the corner of the elevator. My shoulders shook uncontrollably. By the time I reached the parking garage, got into my car, and shut the door, I laughed for a full 30 minutes. I laughed until I was short of breath, laughed until my ribs hurt, laughed until tears covered the steering wheel. It's not that I'm crazy. It's just that none of them knew there was an $80 million hole sitting in that company's books. $80 million, not $8,000. I'd seen those audit reports last year. I'd been dealing with those supplier debts since the year before, the failed projects, the lawsuit settlements, the tax recovery notices from unpaid taxes. Every single one of them was sitting in my desk drawer. I had emailed Victoria 3 times, sent her 2 messages, and spent 40 minutes on a phone call trying to explain the company's financial situation. Her exact response had been, "Can you please be a little more ambitious? Stop bothering me with company problems all the time." Fine then, I wouldn't bother her anymore. Today she took the company away from me. Thank you. Seriously. I pulled out my phone from the glove compartment and sent Marcus a message. "Marcus, are you free tonight? Barbecue's on me." 3 seconds later, he replied, "You're paying? Did the sun rise in the west? What happened? Got divorced? What time? I'm heading over right now to beat that woman up." No, no, no. I quickly typed back. "This dinner is a celebration." The other side went silent for 10 seconds, then one word appeared. "You've lost it." I smiled and started the engine. My phone rang. Richard. I glanced at the caller ID and immediately declined the call. Today was the happiest day I'd had in 3 years. My father-in-law, no, my former father-in-law, could wait until another day. Chapter 3. Celebrating the Disaster Transfer. Marcus's barbecue joint sat in a forgotten corner of the south side of town. 20 tables, no air conditioning, just 3 industrial fans working overtime. Beer was $2.50 a bottle. The skewers sat in plastic baskets on top of a freezer. Customers grabbed their own food, and when they finished eating, the bill was calculated by counting the sticks. By the time I arrived, Marcus had already claimed a table. 8 bottles of beer sat in front of him. 4 were already open. "All right, talk." He shoved an open bottle into my hand. "What happened?" I told him everything that had happened today, word for word. Well, almost. I left out the part where I'd laughed in my car for 30 minutes. When I finished, Marcus slammed his chopsticks onto the table. "That Victoria is unbelievable. She slapped you in front of everyone? Who the hell does she think she is? You practically killed yourself keeping that company afloat for 3 years. Marcus. HM. The company owes $80 million. Marcus froze. A skewer was still hanging from his mouth. His jaw dropped so far it looked ready to hit the table. He sat there like a statue for a full 10 seconds. Then he slowly pulled the skewer out of his mouth and set it down. "How much?" $80 million. Maybe more." "What do you mean?" "I mean Victoria forced me to hand the company over to Julian today, and right now they are probably popping champagne." I paused. "Celebrating the fact that they've just acquired a shell company buried under $80 million of debt." Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, closed it again. Then he grabbed his beer, chugged half the bottle, and wiped his mouth hard. "You mean, you're happy?" "I'm very happy." "You're seriously happy?" "I've never been happier in my life." Marcus stared at me for a full 10 seconds. Then he smacked my shoulder and burst out laughing. The laughter started as a chuckle, then became a cackle, then turned into uncontrollable howling. He doubled over the table, pounding the plastic stool with his fist. A guy at the next table turned around and looked at us like we'd both lost our minds. "That's brilliant." Marcus wiped tears from his eyes. "What do you even call this? Fighting over the right to suffer? Volunteering to take over a disaster? Something like that. Does Julian know?" "Nope." He spent the entire meeting standing behind Victoria with his chest puffed out and his eyes full of determination. I took a sip of beer. He looked exactly like the winner of a startup competition walking on stage to collect a trophy. Marcus burst into another fit of laughter. Then he suddenly thought of something. Wait, if things were this bad, why didn't you just shut the company down or file for bankruptcy? I took another drink. You think Richard would have let me? I shook my head. That company was his life's work. Besides, I was the legal representative. If we'd gone into bankruptcy and liquidation, I would have been the first person hit by the fallout. I looked at the beer bottle in my hand. For the last 3 years, I've been trying to fill the hole. I smiled helplessly. Then I realized there was another hole underneath the hole. So the legal representative has changed now. Yep. Julian signed the stock transfer agreement today. The paperwork for changing legal ownership was already prepared by legal. I raised my bottle and clinked it against Marcus's. The moment he signed, every debt and every lawsuit stopped being my problem. The joy on Marcus's face slowly transformed into something that looked suspiciously like admiration. David, were you waiting for this day all along? No. I shook my head. Honestly, I genuinely wanted to save that company. I paused. I just couldn't. Victoria didn't believe me. Richard thought I was exaggerating. I issued 3 financial risk warnings. All 3 were ignored. So when you realized it couldn't be saved, the only thing left to do was wait for someone else to take it. And they jumped into the fire pit themselves. I smiled. She pushed him in with her own hands. Both of us fell silent for 3 seconds, then we burst out laughing at the same time. That night, I drank the most satisfying 8 beers of my life. When it was time to leave, Marcus insisted on walking me out. With one arm around my shoulder, he asked curiously, "What do you think Julian will do tomorrow on his first day as boss?" I thought about it. He'll probably replace the artwork in the office first. He's obsessed with appearances. I heard he framed 2 copies of his master's degree. One hangs in his office, the other hangs above his bed. Marcus snorted. Then what? Then he'll have someone clear out all my belongings and renovate the CEO's office. And then, I looked at him meaningfully. He'll open the drawer and find the financial statements. Marcus shuddered. Damn, I almost feel sorry for him. Don't. I patted him on the shoulder. Feel sorry for the 80 million instead. Chapter 4. The reality check begins. How did I know what Julian's first day on the job was like? Chloe texted me. Chloe was my former secretary. Yesterday, Victoria informed her that starting today she'd be serving as Julian's assistant. Her message read, CEO Vance, the new boss told me to clear out everything from your office. Do you want me to mail you that cactus of yours? I replied, just throw it away. I've been watering that cactus for 3 years. The only reason it's still alive is pure willpower. Kind of like the company. Chloe sent back a wry smile emoji. Half an hour later, another message arrived. Julian just finished meeting with the executives. Brian reported last quarter's financials. He's locked himself in the office now. Literally locked the door. I was at home eating instant noodles. Yes, instant noodles, not because I was broke, but because during our 3 years of marriage, Victoria wouldn't let me eat them. She said the smell was too strong. Now that I was free, I bought every flavor on the supermarket shelf. Beef, pickled mustard greens, Sichuan pepper beef, tomato, and egg. The one in front of me right now was hot and sour flavor. I hadn't had it in 3 years. I slurped up a huge mouthful of noodles. My toes practically curled with happiness, a taste of heaven. While eating, I texted Chloe back, "Don't worry, last quarter's report was just the appetizer." Chloe replied, "What do you mean?" I answered, "He'll understand when he sees last year's annual report." Chloe replied, "CEO Vance, I'm getting a little scared." I typed, "Scared of what?" "You're an employee. The company has a new owner. As long as payroll goes out, you'll get every penny you're owed. If it doesn't, that's not your fault either." Chloe responded, "That's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried Julian might pass out and nobody will be there to catch him." I almost choked on my noodles. At 1 o'clock in the afternoon, another message came in. Julian asked Brian to pull all financial records from the last 3 years. Brian spent 40 minutes on the phone and carried 3 boxes of files into the office. The door is locked again. At 2 o'clock, 3 suppliers came to collect overdue payments. Julian met with them for about 20 minutes. When he came out, his glasses were completely fogged up and the muscles in his cheeks were twitching. 3 suppliers, only 3. Before I left, there were actually 14 suppliers with outstanding payments. Those 3 were the nicest ones. The other 11 were probably still on their way. I put down my phone and turned on the television. After flipping through 3 channels, I found a comedy movie. The sound of laughter mixed with the aroma of instant noodles made life feel exceptionally good. At 6 o'clock in the evening, Victoria called. I hesitated for a moment, not because I was deciding whether to answer, but because I was deciding what tone of voice to use. In the end, I chose not to answer. After I declined the call, she called twice more. I picked up on the 3rd attempt. "Hello, David. Explain something to me. Why does the company owe Titan Building Materials $1,200,000? Her voice jumped up an entire octave. I had to pull the phone a couple of inches away from my ear. I'd grown tired of that tone 3 years ago. "That's the final payment for the October construction project last year. I told you about it. You were vacationing in Sonia at the time. Your exact reply was, 'Stop bothering me with trivial things like this.'" Silence. 2 seconds. "Then why didn't you handle it?" "I did. I drafted a payment plan that required your approval and signature. But that day you and Julian went to a concert, and you never came back to the office after that." I followed up twice more. No response. Silence again, longer this time. "What about the others? Brian said there are a whole bunch of—" "I told you about all of them, by email, by text, and in person. 3 methods, 7 times in total. You didn't respond once." "You—" "Victoria," I interrupted her, "you're a shareholder now. These are your problems and Julian's. I'm just the ex-husband who walked away with nothing. There's not much I can do." "You—" "Oh, by the way," I added casually, "a few more suppliers might stop by tomorrow. Try to be polite. Don't make my mistake. I was too nice. That's why they kept chasing me down." I hung up. Then I brewed myself a cup of tea, Longjing. When Victoria lived here, she only drank coffee. She always said tea tasted bland. Bland? I took a sip. The fragrance was light and refreshing, not bland at all. Chapter 5. The Unraveling Facade. By Julian's 3rd day as CEO, I already knew exactly what was happening. How? Because Chloe had developed a habit of giving me live updates. I told her she didn't need to anymore. I wasn't part of that company now. She replied, "CEO Vance, I'm not giving you work reports. I'm telling you jokes." Fair enough. The jokes were pretty entertaining. The 3rd day's joke went like this. Julian hired an auditing firm to conduct a full audit. The decision itself was absolutely correct. If he'd done it on day 1, he might still have had a chance to turn the ship around. Unfortunately, he spent his first 2 days doing 3 other things. First, he completely redecorated the executive office. Second, he held a company-wide meeting and delivered a 40-minute inaugural speech titled "Looking Toward the Future." Third, as the new CEO, he took Victoria to a 3-Michelin-star restaurant and posted a photo online with the caption "A New Beginning." Those 3 activities consumed 2 full days. The auditors didn't enter the company until day 3. By day 4, according to Chloe, the lead auditor's expression looked like someone who'd just eaten expired century eggs. The preliminary conclusion: the company's financial problems were far worse than they appeared on paper. The detailed numbers were still being calculated, but the confirmed accounts payable alone were enough to send the lead auditor to the restroom twice just to splash water on his face. I was at home playing ranked matches when I read the message. Promotion series, 5-game winning streak, a critical match. My character was in the middle of a team fight. I glanced at my phone, my hand shook, and the enemy instantly deleted me from existence with a full combo. Not because I was scared, but because I was trying too hard not to laugh. One of my teammates cursed in chat. I quietly typed, "Sorry, got some good news and lost focus." What kind of good news makes you feed like that? My ex-wife's new boyfriend just inherited my disaster of a company. The teammate went silent for 3 seconds, then replied, "Bro, that's not good news. That's the greatest news I've heard all week. Keep playing, I'll carry this one." We won. Maybe it was psychological, but I played exceptionally well after that. At 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I went grocery shopping, actual grocery shopping. During our 3 years of marriage, I was always the one who cooked. Victoria never stepped into the kitchen. She didn't even know how to use the microwave. The funny thing was, she barely touched anything I made. Too oily, too salty, MSG wasn't healthy. Now the kitchen belonged to me. I bought a sea base and planned to steam it following my mother's recipe. Ginger strips underneath, scallions on top, steam for 8 minutes, finish with hot oil. I was picking out scallions at the supermarket when I ran into Victoria's best friend, Samantha. The moment Samantha saw me, her expression switched instantly. A slight furrow of the brows, lips pressed into a thin line, eyes full of sympathy, the universal expression for "I understand your pain." "David, are you okay?" Her voice was soft and careful, as though she feared my fragile soul might shatter if she spoke too loudly. I was holding a fish. My cart contained a bag of rice, 2 bottles of soy sauce, and a package of Sichuan peppercorns. "I'm doing fine. I heard about what happened between you and Victoria," she sighed dramatically. "Don't be too upset. You're a man. Pick yourself up. There are plenty of fish in the sea." Thanks." I nodded and continued examining scallions. Samantha looked at my shopping cart, and her expression became even more complicated. She was probably thinking, the former CEO of a company reduced to grocery shopping and cooking alone. 1 man, 1 fish, 1 bag of rice. How pitiful. Meanwhile, my actual thoughts were, this scallion looks great. Nice thick white stock, perfect for steamed fish. "If you need anything, just let me know." Samantha patted my arm. "Sure, thanks." After she left, I stood there for 5 seconds, then looked down at myself. A t-shirt, shorts, flip-flops, pushing a shopping cart while carrying a fish. I did look remarkably similar to a middle-aged man crushed by life, except I was only 31, and I was having the time of my life. Chapter 6, Collection Calls and Quiet Nights. The steamed sea base turned out perfectly. I snapped a photo and posted it online with the caption, "Dinner for one. The best seasoning is freedom." Marcus was the first to like it. His comment read, "Your ex-wife finished signing those share transfer papers, right? Legally airtight now." I replied, "Relax, it's nailed down tighter than the skewers at your barbecue joint." Victoria's social media, on the other hand, had gone unusually quiet. 2 days earlier, she'd posted that photo with Julian and the caption, "A new beginning." Since then, a stranger had left a comment underneath. "So, did you get a new boyfriend?" She never replied. I was cleaning up the kitchen after dinner when my phone rang again. An unfamiliar number. I answered. "Hello? Is this CEO Vance? This is Manager Davis from Apex Steel about the remaining $3 million from last year's steel shipment." "Manager Davis, nice to meet you." I interrupted politely. "Unfortunately, I'm no longer involved with the company. The legal representative has changed. His name is Julian. Much more capable than me, foreign educated too." There was a pause. The company's under new management." "It is. You can contact him directly then." "Then, do you happen to have his number?" I scrolled through my contacts, found Julian's phone number, and sent it over. "Best of luck with the negotiations." After hanging up, I washed the last bowl and placed it on the drying rack. The kitchen lights reflected brightly off the tiles. Quiet, clean, just me. I took a deep breath, and a smile slowly spread across my face. Life like this was pretty wonderful. Chapter 7, The Pressure Mounts. Julian's 5th day as CEO. At this point, Chloe's updates had officially evolved from jokes into a full-blown drama series. 9 a.m. CEO Vance, Apex Building Materials just showed up. 6 of them, 2 are bald, big arms, even bigger voices. How much do we owe them? $4,800,000. Construction payments from last September, right? I remembered that one. I negotiated an installment plan with them back then. Later the cash flow collapsed, so it never happened. Julian went out to meet them. He got yelled at for 20 minutes. When he came back, his tie was crooked and the second button on his shirt had popped off. I was watering plants on my balcony. Yes, plants. A few pothose vines I brought home from the company when I moved out. Victoria had taken the company, Surely she wasn't going to fight me over a few potted plants too. By the time I reached the third pot, I nearly watered my own shoes, barely managing to stop myself. 11 a.m. Another group just arrived. Apex Steel, 3 million. Brian went out to deal with them. He held them off for half an hour. When he came back, his forehead was covered in sweat and the collar of his shirt was completely soaked. 2 p.m. The logistics company showed up, 2 million. They didn't cause a scene, but before leaving they said, "Pay within 3 days or we'll see you in court." 4 p.m. Julian smashed a mug in his office, the one you used to use, the one that said the boss is always right. That mug had been a gift from Marcus, a sarcastic gift. I never expected it would meet its end in someone else's hands. A fitting death, all things considered. 6 p.m. Victoria showed up, not to see me, to go to the company. According to Chloe, she stayed in Julian's office for 2 hours. When they came out, neither looked happy. For the first time, Julian didn't walk her to the elevator. I stared at the stream of messages on my phone and quietly sipped my chrysanthemum goji berry tea. To be honest, I felt the tiniest bit of, no, not guilt, curiosity. What I was curious about was this. How exactly was he planning to fill that $80 million hole? No, wait. Officially, it was still only $80 million. He was supposed to be a foreign-educated finance prodigy. Surely he had some tricks up his sleeve. At 8 o'clock that night, my phone rang again. This time it wasn't Victoria. It was her father, Richard. The old man's voice came through the speaker with the calm authority of an elder. "Young Vance." For 3 years he called me that, young Vance. Never son-in-law, not once. "Yes, Mr. Sterling. I heard the company is having some difficulties." Difficulties? An $80 million crater reduced to one word. Impressive. The older generation of entrepreneurs really knew how to downplay a disaster. "Yes, there are some difficulties." A pause. "Then, when you were running the company, why didn't you mention any of this?" I almost laughed. I bit my lip and took 3 deep breaths. "Mr. Sterling, I did mention it. Last June, I sent you a financial analysis report, 17 pages, printed in color with charts, pie charts, bar graphs, the full package." "Well," and your exact response was, "Young people always exaggerate problems. This company has been running for 20 years. Nothing serious will happen." The line went silent for a long time, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. "Mr. Sterling, was there anything else? I need to reheat dinner." "No." The call ended. I walked into the kitchen and opened the microwave. Beep. Inside was the leftover steamed sea base from yesterday. A minute later, it was hot again. The fish was reheated, and so was my life. Chapter 8. The $120 million bombshell. On Julian's 10th day as CEO, everything fell apart. Not a little apart. The kind of collapse where a dam bursts and the whole thing comes crashing down in one deafening wave. The final audit report came out. The company's total debt wasn't $80 million, it was $120 million. The extra $40 million came from off-the-books liabilities, a mess left behind by Richard's generation, hidden inside subsidiaries of subsidiaries, layered one beneath another. The accounting tricks had survived for 15 years. A full audit finally dragged them into the light. I learned all this from Chloe. To be honest, even I froze when I saw the number. I knew about the 80 million. 120 million? Good Lord. The company was in even worse shape than I thought. Good thing I got out when I did. According to Chloe, Julian's reaction to the number was, he sat in his office for 40 straight minutes without moving, didn't say a single word. Coffee from his thermos spilled all over the report and he didn't even wipe it up. He just stared at the ceiling without blinking. Then he called Victoria. Chloe overheard fragments of the conversation. "Victoria, this company isn't what you told me it was." "What?" "No, that's not what I mean. Will you calm down and listen to me?" "Victoria? Victoria?" The call was disconnected. Victoria hung up. I didn't know why. Maybe she panicked, maybe she didn't want to hear it, or maybe she'd finally realized that what she'd taken from me wasn't a gold mine. It was a ticking time bomb, and she'd personally placed the detonator in Julian's hands. On day 11, I received a lawyer's letter, not one aimed at me, but sent on Julian's behalf. The wording was very diplomatic. Given the possibility that material information may not have been fully disclosed during the equity transfer process, our client reserves the right to pursue all available legal remedies. Translated into plain English, you never told me the company had this much debt. You set me up. I looked at the letter and shook my head with a smile. Then I walked into my study and pulled out a file folder from a drawer. Inside were neatly organized documents, 3 printed emails, each accompanied by Victoria's acknowledgement receipts, 2 screenshots of our chat history complete with delivery confirmations and red timestamps, a burned CD containing a 40-minute phone call recording, every minute carefully annotated with summaries, and 3 written financial risk warnings, each bearing Victoria's signature. Yes, she signed every single one, every single one. She simply signed them, tossed them into a drawer, and never looked at them again. I took a photo of the evidence and sent it to a lawyer friend. Take a look. Do I have enough documentation? 3 minutes later, he replied, enough. You've got enough to drown someone. If he actually sues you, you could counterclaim for malicious litigation. And I've reviewed your equity transfer agreement. Clause 14 is crystal clear. The transferee acknowledges full understanding of the target company's operating condition and voluntarily assumes all associated risks. He signed it himself. I placed the lawyer's letter back into the folder. When the agreement was being drafted, legal had asked whether I wanted that clause included. I said, yes, absolutely yes. Then legal asked, won't they read the contract carefully? I laughed. If she doesn't read financial reports, what makes you think she'll read a contract? Turns out I was right. That night, I made an exception and opened a bottle of wine. Victoria had kept it in the wine cabinet. She'd always said Julian brought it back from France, and she'd never been willing to open it. When I moved out, it somehow ended up packed into one of my boxes. A second label estate bottle, not outrageously expensive, but tonight it tasted exceptionally sweet. Chapter 9. Dead inside in the janitor's closet. On Julian's 15th day as CEO, he wanted to quit, but he couldn't. The change of legal ownership had already been completed. He was now the company's legal representative and controlling shareholder. The debts, the lawsuits, the tax recovery claims, every single one of them was attached to his name. Want to walk away? The law wouldn't allow it, not unless he could find someone else willing to take over, and there weren't many people in this world more gullible than he was. Before resigning, Chloe posted one final update, not to me, but to her old high school group chat. The screenshot eventually made its way around the internet. It read, Daily update. Everyone, our company's new CEO has officially evolved from full of ambition to dead inside. During today's meeting, he stared at the ceiling for 8 straight minutes without saying a word. When the meeting ended, he walked through the wrong door, entered the janitor's closet, and sat next to a mop bucket for 5 minutes before coming back out. The replies below were almost identical. More updates. Hurry. Following this story, this is better than a web novel. When Marcus forwarded me the screenshot, I was cooking noodles, homemade noodles. I had kneaded the dough myself, with a fried egg and 2 slices of braised beef on top. My quality of life was steadily improving. Your former secretary has become an internet novelist. Marcus followed the message with 10 laughing until crying emojis. She worked for me for 3 years. Her writing skills had plenty of time to develop. Has she produced more content in these 2 weeks than you did in 3 years? Shut up. Julian tried to transfer the shares back to Victoria. Victoria refused. Her reasoning was, this is my father's company. I can't let it collapse because of me. You figure something out. Aren't you a foreign-educated finance genius? According to rumors, Julian responded, I studied financial theory, not disaster response. Victoria shot back. Didn't you always say that if someone gave you a platform, you could accomplish great things? That only works if it's a normal platform, not a $120 million sinkhole. Can't you come up with something? All my solutions combined wouldn't even cover the interest on this hole. These details came from Chloe before she left. The actual conversation was probably much less polite. According to her, it included a generous amount of colorful language and emotional exclamations. Victoria stormed out and slammed the door behind her. Julian stayed alone in his office until midnight. Chapter 10. Confronting the Past. Day 17. Richard came to see me. He stood alone at my front door. No driver, no assistant, no daughter. When I opened the door, I was wearing flip-flops and a cheap t-shirt I'd bought from a street market. He looked me up and down. 3 years ago, when he'd married his daughter to me, I wore tailored suits. My hair was thicker. My posture was straight. I looked like a man ready to conquer the world. Now I was standing there in shorts and a sleeveless shirt. Yet somehow I looked more alive than I had back then. The confusion in his eyes was impossible to hide. "Mr. Sterling, would you like to come in?" "No," he waved his hand. "I only came to ask one question." "Go ahead." "You knew the company couldn't survive, didn't you?" "I did." "Then why didn't you leave?" I looked at him. "When you handed the company to me, I promised I'd do my best, and I did, for 3 years. But the hole was too big. My abilities weren't enough to fill it. I told Victoria 7 times. She didn't believe me. I brought it up to you once. You didn't believe me either. And then you just waited." "I didn't wait." I shook my head. "I tried taking loans to keep the company alive. I cut failing projects. I negotiated payment plans with suppliers one by one. But none of that solved the real problem. The company's profits couldn't cover its historical debt, and I don't have hundreds of millions of dollars lying around to bail it out." A muscle twitched in Richard's cheek. "The day Victoria asked you to sign the transfer agreement, that was her idea, not mine. From beginning to end, the only thing I did was have legal add to the contract. The transferee acknowledges full understanding of the company's operating condition." The old man closed his eyes for a moment. "You kid." "Mr. Sterling," I spoke calmly, "I wasn't trying to trap anyone. I was genuinely carrying more than I could handle. If she wanted the company, she could have it. She just should have read the financial statements first. That responsibility isn't mine." Richard stood there in silence for a long time, the evening breeze lifting a few strands of his white hair. Finally, he asked, "Is there any way to save the company now?" I thought about it. "The cleanest option is bankruptcy and liquidation. Julian is the legal representative now. He can initiate the process. The sooner the better. The longer they wait, the more interest and penalties will pile up." Richard lowered his gaze. "And Victoria and Julian? That's their problem now." My voice remained steady. "Mr. Sterling, it's not that I'm heartless. I simply can't help, and I shouldn't." When Richard finally turned and left, his back looked a little more hunched than when he'd arrived. I closed the door, stood in the entryway for a moment, then walked into the kitchen and took a yogurt from the refrigerator. Strawberry flavor, limited edition. I'd stood in line for 10 minutes that afternoon just to buy it. I sat on the couch, twisted off the cap, and drank it slowly. Then I casually checked my phone. A friend who worked in restaurant supply chain management had sent me a message. His team was building a new venture. They needed a partner with management experience. Was I interested? I sat down the yogurt and carefully reviewed the project materials. The direction looked solid. The team was young and energetic. And most importantly, the company's books were spotless. Not a single dollar of hidden debt. I replied with one word: "Let's talk." Chapter 11: Bankruptcy and New Beginnings. On Julian's 21st day as CEO, the company officially entered bankruptcy liquidation. The creditors' meeting lasted an entire day. 14 suppliers, 3 banks, 2 individual creditors, and representatives from the tax bureau. Julian remained silent throughout the entire meeting, according to the final work update Chloe sent before resigning. After signing the last document, Julian dropped his pen. It rolled across the table, reached the edge, fell to the floor, and bounced twice. He didn't pick it up. Victoria never showed up, not once. She was absent from the entire creditors' meeting. The last update on her social media was still the one from 20 days ago, the post Julian had made, a new beginning. Recently, a new comment had appeared underneath it from an account nobody recognized. "Quite a beginning you've got there." 47 likes. Not from me, seriously, not me. I'd been busy. I'd already gone through 2 rounds of interviews with a new company. The direction was confirmed. The paperwork was done. I was starting over from scratch as a partner, base salary plus profit sharing. Nothing extravagant, but solid. On my first day, Marcus took me out for drinks at his barbecue stand. Same old table, Beer was still $2.50. The skewers were still self-service. Eat first, count sticks later. I heard Julian is gone. Marcus flipped a skewer and glanced at me. He is. After the bankruptcy proceedings, there are still a pile of legal obligations tied to him as the former legal representative. I heard he's already listed his apartment trying to raise money to cover the portion he's personally liable for. Serves him right, Marcus snorted. Guy saw a chance to play white knight and jumped straight into the trap. I wouldn't put all the blame on him. I shook my head. He genuinely didn't know how bad things were. Then who do we blame? Victoria? I didn't answer. Marcus took another bite of meat and didn't push further. Fine, enough about them. How's the new job? Pretty good. Just have to build everything from the ground up again. Marcus laughed. So what? You're 31, not 51. Just remember one thing. This time, never partner with someone who doesn't read financial reports. He pointed his skewer at me. Business or marriage? I laughed and kicked the leg of his stool. A month later, the new company was gradually finding its rhythm. One afternoon during lunch, I ran into Victoria outside a cafe in a shopping mall. She'd changed quite a bit. She'd lost weight, the meticulous makeup was gone, and the designer handbag she'd once carried had been replaced by a simple canvas tote. She saw me too. We stood there looking at each other for about 3 seconds. She spoke first. David. Yeah. How have you been? Pretty good. I smiled. How about you? She forced a smile. It trembled before settling into place. The company. She lowered her eyes. That was my fault. I slipped my hands into my pockets and said nothing. I should have listened to you. The reports, the emails. I never read a single one. Julian left. He said I deceived him. You didn't deceive him. I looked at her calmly. You just didn't know how deep the water was yourself. Her shoulders trembled. Her eyes reddened immediately. Back then, seeing her cry would have broken my heart. During our first year of marriage, she'd cried once after a bad day at work. I'd held her and comforted her for an hour. Now, looking at those reddened eyes, I felt nothing dramatic. Not hatred, not indifference, just peace. I'd moved on. Victoria. Yeah. Stop dwelling on it. Go to work. Live your life. Your father is getting older. Spend more time with him. She froze, then slowly nodded. I turned and walked away without looking back. As I stepped out of the mall, sunlight fell across my face, warm, comforting. My phone buzzed. A message from Marcus. You coming tonight? Got some excellent beef today. Saved £2 before the suppliers took it. If you don't show up, I'm grilling it all myself. I replied, I'm coming. My treat. A few seconds later, you're paying? Did the sun rise in the west again? I laughed. Last time was my treat too. When are you upgrading that goldfish memory of yours? Last time? The last time you treated was the day your ex-wife stole that $80 million disaster. So what's the occasion this time? I looked at the screen and smiled, then typed, no special reason. The weather's nice today. I reached the parking lot, got into my car, inserted the key, and started the engine. In the rearview mirror, my reflection looked back at me, a healthy complexion, and my hair, it seemed a little thicker than last month. An old song played on the radio. I hummed along for a few lines and pressed down on the accelerator. The car rolled out of the parking lot and merged into traffic. Sunlight streamed through the windshield, warm and bright. My time has only just begun. Chapter 12, True Wealth and Happy Beginnings. 2 years passed in the blink of an eye. The supply chain company I helped build from scratch wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Clean accounting, transparent operations, and a team that actually cared meant our annual revenues shattered every forecast we set. For the first time in my life, success didn't feel like carrying a heavy anvil across a tightrope. It felt light. It felt earned. I bought a sunlit apartment near the coast, with a massive kitchen and a balcony full of thriving pothose plants. One evening, I hosted a celebration dinner at my place. Marcus showed up first, carrying a case of craft beers and wearing a tailored suit that looked hilariously fancy for a man who used to run a 20-table barbecue joint. His business had expanded into a successful chain of modern restaurants, all sourced directly through my supply firm. Look at you, CEO Vance, Marcus laughed, setting the drinks down on my quartz counter. No hidden debts, no toxic boardrooms, and not a single mop bucket in sight. Best part. I grinned, tossing him a dish towel. Every single balance sheet gets read down to the last decimal. The doorbell rang a few minutes later. I opened it to find Chloe standing there, holding a bottle of fine red wine. After leaving Victoria's sinking ship, Chloe had joined my new company as chief operations lead. Her sharp mind and humor were instrumental in keeping our growth on track. Beside her was my legal advisor friend, along with a few core team members who had stood by me from day one. As the evening wore on, the apartment echoed with music, brilliant food, and warm laughter. I looked around the room, at real friends, honest partners, and a future entirely of my own making. My phone chimed softly on the counter. It was a news alert from the city's business forum. Former Sterling Group XX complete debt settlement. Victoria Sterling takes entry-level management role at local firm. There was a time when reading her name would bring a wave of residual stress. Now, I simply tapped the screen off. I wished her well, but her story belonged to a past life that no longer had any hold on me. Chloe walked over to the glass balcony doors, holding a glass of wine, and looked out at the twinkling skyline. "What are you thinking about, David?" she asked, turning to me with a soft smile. I took a deep breath, feeling the cool ocean breeze drift through the open patio. I had financial freedom, genuine peace of mind, and people around me who valued truth over vanity. "I'm thinking," I smiled, clinking my glass against hers, "that losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to me. True wealth isn't about owning a company, it's about owning your life." Everyone raised their glasses in agreement, the room bursting into another round of cheers. The night was warm, the ocean breeze was gentle, and as I looked out at the glowing horizon, I knew with absolute certainty that the happiest chapter of my life was the one I was living right now.